And we're live with the thunder from down under. I present to you my guest, Borrmagni Leatherscraps. Did I pronounce that right, Bor?
It's fine by me. Sounded pretty good.
I tried to roll my R's there. You know, I'm a little slow on such things.
No. I'm very fond of rolled R's. It's something that I think your accent and my accent naturally don't do, and it's something we need to do more of. You know?
Yes, it's something that needs to be perfected, I guess you could say.
Indeed.
How you doing tonight, Bor? I know I asked you like last year about coming on a stream, and I'm tickled to death to finally have you here. How are you doing this? Well, in your part of the world, it's around lunchtime, I suppose.
Yeah, it's midday here. It's just gone past noon. But I'm well. No complaints. No complaints from this man. How you doing?
Dude, I'm feeling good, feeling great. Tickled to death to be here. Life's going good. Everything's going smooth. Sometimes I wonder, though, if things aren't going a bit too smoothly, you know. But, things are good. So I figured what we would talk about tonight is a variety of topics. This is just going to be a casual conversation, nothing scripted, nothing really planned out in advance. We're just a couple of guys having a good conversation, shooting the shit, as we say here in the South.
We say that here too. Yeah.
Oh, do yous? Oh, hell yeah.
I think our respective locations are probably fairly similar. As far like there's a lot of variance in like Australian accents and cultures depending on what part you're in, and like as in America, and I think probably the respective same, you know, as is in the US. You know?
Well, see, I've heard a lot of people say that, I remember years, this has been over a decade ago, I worked at a resort over in the state of North Carolina, a hotel, and they had a fancy restaurant there. I worked as a waiter there. And one time I met a couple that was from Northern Australia. I can't remember which part, though, but they said that they loved the American South because everyone here, by and large, is, fairly laid back. People are usually much more friendly here in the southern U.S. Like if you pass someone out on a street, they'll say hello, how you doing? It's a little different up north from what I understand. But they told me that in Australia, it seems like the northern Australians are more friendly than the southern Australians. I don't know if this is true. I've never been there. Have you noticed any correlation to this statement, or?
I guess kind of like everything in Northern Australia is a little bit more wild.
Okay.
So, and in that sense, so like the people who are, well, when I think of Northern Australians, like that's North Queensland mainly, they're all like just really loose, so to speak, and because of that, like more, like they tend to be like the more, well, they're friendly in the sense that they're probably more drunk than everyone else on average.
Yeah.
But and like the Southerners, when you think generally Southerners, that's most of the population's in the southeast corner of Australia, but that's also like the most metropolitan population as well. So you get like all those pretentious hipster yuppie types. So it's kind of not like a fair north to south necessarily. It's more to do with like rural and wild versus domestic and so we say civilized.
Yeah.
So therefore
city.
They're rude,
Yeah, city and urban living, I think that's possibly I know Apollonian Germ has said it before, that I think that divide, the urban versus, rural living, that divide is possibly the biggest divide, other than, the racial divide, at least up here in the United States. I figured I'd just ask you a little bit about how life is down there in Australia. I remember last year seeing on Telegram that there were a lot of posts about, the COVID tyranny that was going on down there. And I think I remember I asked you in a conversation we had back then, you said your area wasn't affected by that bullshit very much, was it?
Not really, no. I think a lot of that's probably due because I don't have a TV, so like I kind of cut the shit. I've got a lot of friends, or a few good friends that are still in the cities. So like whenever there was some sort of lockdown or whatever COVID regulation, I didn't know what was going on, so I just carried on living life as usual. And like I traveled to and from like towns and cities, less so the cities, but plenty of places where restrictions are implemented, and I just carried on not caring, and I never had any trouble. But I think in the bigger cities it was a lot more strict because there's more social pressure to fall in line. But even the nearest towns and everything that I was frequenting, they didn't actually seem to have the same kind of restrictions. I guess maybe because of regional differences or something like that.
Yeah.
But I'd always check in with my city buddy and be like, so what's the law at the moment? Because I got to come down soon or whatever. Like, am I supposed to be wearing a mask or wearing like a gap? Like, do I need to wear a bag on my head or what? I don't know. Not that I'd do it, but just so I know what to be prepared for in case of conflict, But I managed to go through the whole entire ordeal with never masking, never. They had the sign-in things you're supposed to have on your phone, like if you're going to all the shops and everything like that. And like I'm so cool, I can say I never did any of that.
Hell yeah. Fucking refusal to comply. That's what we like to hear. We like to hear these refusals. So that's good. You must live in a fairly rural part of Australia, don't you?
Yeah, fairly. It gets like I'm not far from everything. Like I'm close enough that I can get what I want and what I need if I need, but I'm further enough away that I'm away from all the bullshit. So I could be further away and it'd have its benefits, but like there are perks to being close to civilization.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to travel too far to go raiding and whatnot,
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. What was you going to say?
Oh no, I wasn't going to say anything intelligent. I was just mumbling. So go.
I was going to say it seems like it's about ideal if you can live on what I would call the periphery of civilization. Just have maybe a toe in the water, but the rest of it, be away from it if you can.
Yeah, that's what I got going on here. Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, I know. I figured. Let's see. How long has your family been in Australia? Actually, do you know how many generations? Man.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Well, where I live now in my house, my home. This is a good example to start with. This was a house that's been in my maternal line for 7 generations. So it was growing up, it was always my great grandmother's place, and she raised her children, which is my grandmother there.
Yeah.
And the property next door is where my great grandmother grew up as a child. And then so that house has been in the family just as long. But my great grandmother bought the house I'm in now. She bought it off of her own grandmother, who had the house built. So that was in the very early 1900s. But then my family was here for a couple of decades before that. But it's a relatively young country, So like the first settlers here don't go as way back as you have over there. But yeah, we've been here for a while. My great grandfather, like my grandfather's father, he came over from Ireland, and all the respective like husbands of the maternal line have basically been all immigrants, as far as like they weren't born in Australia.
Yeah.
Pretty well all the way back till my great grandmother came over, but she came over with her. Oh no, pardon me, no. She was she got a bit of funny story. I'm a bit sketchy about. Like she was married, either left her husband or her husband left her or something like that, and then she remarried, and there's a whole bunch of bullshit going on there. But yeah, no, basically my maternal line's been here for 7 generations. That's as far back as we go.
Yeah.
And otherwise, everyone from my great grandparent back has come directly from Europe. So we're still fairly young here, but we got a foothold here at the same time. So it's more. We've got more history in this, and it's always been in this one place too. Like it's not like we came and moved around all the way around Australia. Like we came to this one spot and then kind of set up here.
Yeah.
I tell people I got no love for this country, like this nation, so to speak. Really, like I don't have the national pride or anything like that. But where I am, like there's a lot of history and a lot of like memory here. Like it's been invaluable to me. So if I didn't live in this particular like land on this property and everything like that, like I'd just leave. I'd leave the island. I'd try and go back to, I don't know where I'd go, because wherever you go, there's going to be problems. But like, I'd be much suited to a climate. I'd like to live in an island or something like that. But I think there's a bit of bullshit going on there now too.
Yeah. So that's where your family is largely from originally, is Ireland.
Well, no, that's another bit of bullshit that I got told growing up. Like my great grandfather came over from Ireland, but we didn't know much about his family and his descendants, or his ancestors rather. And it was always, oh, we're Irish. But I did a bit of digging, and didn't take long to find out that all the so-called Irish ancestors were actually all German migrants, migrants from Germany rather, yeah. And there's several families that came over. It was about 500 years. Oh, I'm not sure now. About somewhere between 300 to 500 years ago, there was a great migration from Germany to Ireland, and all these families kind of were living amongst each other in Germany and in their island, and then they moved to Ireland, and they kept kind of to themselves somewhat in Ireland, and then they're my so-called Irish ancestors. I know I have a great-grandmother who was Irish. But other than that, that's about it. It's majority, when you look at roots, they're all like German or Swiss, mainly, or Dutch. There's some Dutch in there too.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was about to say you look very Germanic. So I figured,
well, I feel pretty Germanic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just got a couple of quick questions about the history of Australia. When did Europeans start settling Australia? Because, see, I don't know anything about your country's history, to tell you the truth.
Well, when you asked me that question, the first thing that came to my mind was my indoctrination, and 1788 was the year of first settlement. So without thought, that's the answer I have for you. So that's when they first brought convicts over here. The Dutch came here possibly 16 something, I think. Don't quote me on that, but about decades earlier anyway. And they navigated and mapped and everything like that, which led to the British colonization thereafter, which was when it became penal colony, New South Wales. And that's when they started bringing all the convicts here. So the story about everyone in Australia being descended from convicts is not entirely true, because I've got no convict ancestry. Yeah. So like my family came over, and most of them came over as miners, like gold mining, when the gold rush was on.
Oh, that's
which
cool.
Was in the late 1800s. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, there was gold rushes all around Australia, but the particular one that brought my family here was in the late 1800s.
Oh, that's pretty cool. See, like I said, there's a lot of this history we don't know up here in America. But hell, then again, you got to say, a lot of fucking Americans don't even know their own fucking history nowadays. So,
yeah.
Man,
there's a lot of alternative history that goes with the place as well. Like, so that's what was taught in school. But there's actually in southwestern Australia, there's Nordic settlements that haven't been dated and that no one likes to talk about. There's pyramids here that are at least presumably thousands of years old, but that's another thing that gets sort of swept under the rug. So there was a lot more going on a long time ago that doesn't get acknowledged, and if it does get acknowledged, it gets quickly dismissed. So
they dismiss it as a hoax or some bullshit.
There's one particular one I like. I looked into years ago. It's called the Gosford Glyphs. It's down in New South Wales, just west of Sydney, which is one of the bigger cities in Australia. And there's all these hieroglyphs, presumably like Egyptian style hieroglyphs in this cave there. And, the nearby university tried to dismiss it, that, some hippies did that in the 70s or something like that. And then when that got sort of dismissed by the people who were looking into it, they tried to say that that there was some sort of World War I veterans came back and they learned the glyphs when they were in Egypt, and they're the ones who put it there. But then there's I can't even remember exactly what it was. I think it was some sort of lichen that's growing, or formed in the carvings, which means it predates World War I.
Yeah, anything.
Yeah, so that's out the window now as well. So, and depending on who you ask, it could be aliens, it could be whatever. But
Yeah,
I think a lot of the stuff that gets sort of dismissed is, well, not dismissed, but a lot of people like to attach to aliens. It's like, why do you need to go aliens? Why can't, why is it so hard to believe there was not an ancient civilization, or not so ancient civilization, that was traveling the world? It's not that hard, really.
yeah, it really isn't. I think our distant ancestors went all across the world.
Oh yeah,
There is a legend here in my part of Appalachia. They call it the Moon-eyed people. The moon, like the moon-eyed people. The
like big round
Cherokee,
moon, like
yeah,
big round moon, or
yeah, they call them the Moon-eyed people. Um,
yeah,
and the Cherokee Indians that inhabited Appalachia, this part of Appalachia, I think they arrived here in Appalachia around, I believe, the 1600s or so, and they
yeah,
came down. They came down from the Great Lakes region originally, um, but the Cherokee have this legend that when they arrived here in this part of Tennessee, and this legend's also in western North Carolina and North Georgia as well. They said they came upon a race of men who were blonde or redheaded, and they had blue eyes. That's why they called them the moon-eyed people, and they grew beards and stuff. They built in stone too, because the Cherokee Indians, they use stone for tools like clubs or tomahawks or spears, but they never built. They always just used wood for their living structures. And there is a place about 45. It's about a 45 minute to an hour drive from where we live here in Southeast Tennessee in Georgia, and it's called Fort Mountain. And at the top of it, I had actually we went down there a couple of years ago, me and the old lady, and when I got there, I didn't know that this was tied to the Moon-eyed people until I started reading the plaques there and stuff. And I was like, "Holy shit! I've heard this story from when I was a child." And Fort Mountain is called Fort Mountain because there is this. It's nearly a 900-foot long rock wall that was built, and the Cherokee said that they attacked it consistently, but eventually they conquered the Moon-eyed people that lived at the top of that mountain. And that's just I always thought that was a very interesting thing. I think that ancient whites were they call them Salutrians, I believe. I
yeah,
believe
yeah. In America, yeah,
yeah, they came. I mean, if you look at the artifacts, like like really old spearheads and arrowheads that you find, they are exactly identical to the same type of spearheads from the same period of time you find all throughout Europe.
yeah.
It's really a really interesting story. I do think that there is a lot that we are lied to about our people's
Oh,
history.
definitely, yeah. And it doesn't take much to disconnect everyone. Like, it only takes a couple of generations before it's all completely lost to the masses. Like all you got to do is all you got to do is cut people off for 1-2 generations, and if you don't know anyone who was alive at the time of the truth that's in dispute, like there's no way of confirming one. You have to settle with some sort of authority on what you think is the truth. Otherwise, it's all
Yeah,
speculation.
this scholarly authority that we all labor under nowadays. I can't help
Yeah,
it, man. I know there's some people in this thing that like they always talk about the scholarly approach to everything or the academic approach, and I can't help it. That shit gets on my fucking nerves. I'm not
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
lie.
yeah.
It's just like, man, I feel like I can recognize good work when I see it. You don't have to sit there and toot your own fucking horn all the time and be like,
No,
oh, my work is so scholarly and academic and whatnot. It's just a turn off
yeah,
in a way. But yeah, it's interesting talking about. There was a question in the chat, someone or a statement. I'm gonna post it on the screen here. Let me see
oh
if I
yeah,
can
cool.
post it.
That's better because I can see it. Yeah,
Let me see. It might take me just a second. Uh, there's a guy in the chat, Bjarki. I think that's who made the statement. Give me just a second to find it.
yeah. That guy made a comment on my YouTube channel earlier, and I didn't get back to him, but I did get it. So greetings, Bjarki.
Yeah. He said that there are Bigfoots in Australia too. Not even joking. Is there legends of a large, hairy sort of ape man down there in Australia as well? Have you ever heard of
Yes,
any?
yes.
What do they
There's
call
the yowie. I guess
the
that's what he's
yowie?
speaking about, the yowie. Yeah, which is basically like big ape man, and they are. There's still people to this day that are yowie hunting, just like you got the Bigfoot hunters in the US there in America.
Yeah.
There's always those ridiculous things attached to it as well that make it kind of like the turd in the punch bowl, so no one wants to go there. Like,
Yeah.
I'm on the fence. I'd never come across a yowie myself, but yeah, I don't see a problem with the thought that these things could exist. I mean, I know people who don't want to be found can hide quite easily. Why not a giant ape man? You know, depending on who you ask. Too, I talked to some people about it that said they used to speak to the Aboriginals about it, and they apparently they used to talk to them, talk to the Yowies, like the Aboriginals and the Yowies used to communicate, and they used to communicate in Latin, and some people also said that there's some Aboriginal dialects that are synonymous with Magyar, like Hungarian language, which is
Really?
another testament to some sort of ancient
Possible
link.
connection there.
Yeah. So one way or the other, either way, there's plenty of people out there who believe, and like, you know, there's I think there's elements of truth in just about every crazy story. It's just a matter of how much of it's true. But yeah, I don't dismiss it. I think it's entirely possible. There's a lot of unexplored territory. Like, you know, I look at the mountains up here, and there's plenty of stuff that you can't see unless you go looking. And like, I know there's hundreds and hundreds of deer on the mountain, like right where I am. And you know, if they don't want to be found, you don't find them.
Oh yeah. What
You know?
species of deer do you all have down there? Just curious.
We got quite a few actually. The main ones around where I live, we get chital, like Bambi, and we get red deer.
Okay.
We've also in Australia we get roost deer, and what are those other ones? We get fallow deer, and there's another one, hog deer. But they're all more down south, I think, the hog deer. I've never come across one of them. But the main ones up here are red deer and chital.
Huh. That's interesting. I know we've got a white-tailed deer right here in Appalachia. Bambi, I guess you would say. I know if you go out west here in North America, you'll come across mule deer, they're kind of unique looking. Just a quick question too about the Aboriginals. What do y'all see many Aboriginals in your area? Is there a lot of them in Australia, or is it, are they kind of like the Native American is up here in the United States?
I guess they're kind of like that. Yeah, like there's reserves, or there's like specific towns and communities where there's nothing but Aboriginals, basically. When you sort of you have to go away from the metropolitan areas for that. There's one not too far from where I live, like, as in, it's far enough away that they don't bother me or my people here. But like where I live, it's pretty white. Like there's one guy that lives nearby who's like a quarter Aboriginal, and there was two Filipino women, but one of them died. So,
oh really?
So there's mainly white people where I am, but then you've got like all your city Aboriginals, which are like a completely different type of person. You could say that at all, like much like the city people are completely different again.
An assortment of wildlife there, you could say, I guess, right?
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat real quick. Dawn Browning.
Yeah.
I'll post it here. She asked, "Is Borrmagni a hunter? Do you hunt a lot, Bor?"
Not as much as I'd like to, but yeah, I do like to hunt. I'm not a great hunter, but I'm a capable hunter.
Yeah.
I haven't done too much of late. The last thing I killed was I don't know about what the last thing I killed was, but last time I had a conscious effort hunting was a fox. I tried some trapping. I did a bit of trapping for the first time, and I snared a fox recently. So that was something kind of exciting for me, a bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What kind of fox is it? Do y'all have red foxes down there, or are there species?
Red fox is basically, that's the only one that we get, I believe. But they're rampant around here, and like I normally just let them be. Like they don't bother me too much normally, but I keep chickens, and mine are pretty like free range, so it means they're fair game. And every now and then, like fox would come and take one. That's whatever. That's part of it. But it got to the point where it was coming. It wasn't coming and taking one every night, but it was coming every night. And like my dog's pretty good. So like the dogs are up, and then I go out to have a look and everything like that. And I was losing sleep over it, not because it was worrying me, but just because it's my job to get up and
check on
mark my territory. Yeah, so I just got sick of that more than anything. And then it did actually end up getting one of these chickens, and I don't even know how many chickens I've got. I've got that many, but there was the only one that was named got taken, so it was pretty ropeable. So yeah, it was so and the fox was dead within a week. So yeah.
Oh yeah, you succeeded, eliminated the problem. That's awesome.
And I haven't had any fox problems since. Like they still get around, I hear them, but I don't think I've had one on my property since. But like this guy had a track through my paddocks. Like he was doing the same thing every day. Like he had his own path, he had his own little hole in the fence here and there, and like I knew where he was going. And I did try and snare him months and months ago, but every time I put the snares out, he wouldn't come around. So I figured, oh, well, that's kind of working then. But I was more worried about catching something that I didn't want to snare, and I stopped doing it for a while, and then he came back again. So yeah, then I got him, and
yeah, that's awesome. It's trapping is a skill that's absolutely worth knowing. It's what I would consider, a passive way to, acquire meat or whatever you need, instead of actively having to go out and hunt, having to trek all through the woods up in the mountains, it's a passive way to, secure some food or whatever.
Definitely.
Absolutely. There was a question too I meant to ask. Do y'all have well, let me see. There was a question in the chat. My friend Finn Wraith, he asked, are Australians allowed to own guns? I'm sure y'all are. What is the gun laws down there really strict? Like here in America, we've always labored, I think, under this idea that all the other countries, they don't have, Second Amendment or whatever. How is the situation down there in Australia?
Yeah, it's pretty gay, but we can have guns, but you have to jump through hoops to get licensed and to get your gun and everything like that. And depending on how your application goes and everything like that, if you're not licensed, like I'm not licensed because I don't like having any red tape attached to me. So for my because what they'll do is they come around and do random weapons checks. So they'll just come to your house and just go, okay, where are your guns? Let's see where you keep. Make sure you're doing everything by the book and all that kind of thing. And I don't want that because I don't want them coming to my house unannounced. So I figured I best not have a record in that respect. So I don't own guns. I have a bow, so I bow hunt. And then I won't be as bold as to say I'm a trapper. But so there's guns everywhere. They're like out rurally, like everyone's got guns, and most people who have guns have plenty. So I figure the only time I need a gun, I figure is because it'd be handy, it'd be easier to do some hunting with a gun. But if shit hits the fan, it wouldn't take me long to get one, whether it be someone offering me one or me taking it from someone. Not that hard, really. But as far as legalities go, you can have guns. We're not allowed to have fully automatics. We're not allowed to have grenade launchers, rocket launchers, all that sort of stuff that you guys can have.
Oh, we can't have fully auto either, unfortunately. I'd love to have something but
well, you might as well stop citing that second. It's nothing to brag about. Then.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's the huge gun debate here in the United States right now. A lot of these liberals and leftists, they will say shit like, "Oh, the founding fathers didn't want us to have AK-47s and AR-15s, these weapons of war. Yet we can't have one that is fully automatic." Okay, and they talk about, oh, the Second Amendment was for when people had muskets and such. But if you look at it back then, the founding fathers here in this country, they had, muskets, of course. They had artillery. They had all these other things. Yeah. They were on an even an even playing field between, the British and the the colonies. Nowadays, fuck, we're at a disadvantage. I want my fully auto AK. I want me an RPG. I want to be able to, do stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I've heard all those arguments as well. And, some people stand up for the whole, we like why you need to have autos or why you need to have less restrictions on your weapons and everything like that. And they say fight against a tyrannical government. And I've heard all the retarded responses, like, as if that's ever going to happen. What would you need that for? I'm like, you retards even know your own country's history? that's
Yeah.
that's how it began, right? You know. But,
Oh yeah. I
there's
don't know.
idiots abound everywhere. Yeah.
Man, it's, I hate to say this sometimes, like, over the last few months, I've been doing a lot of thinking about, America and things of that and our country's history, and I think that, I don't even really consider myself American. I just consider myself, Appalachian, a hillbilly,
Yeah.
basically. America is America's got a vapid culture of just consumerism, unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
And this
Yeah.
shit has spread like cancer. It's spread like cancer to Europe. I'm sure it's down there in Australia. I know even here in East Tennessee, you go through these small towns. All these small towns, they all have the same fucking stores in them. There's a Dollar General, the same gas stations, the same a McDonald's, all this bullshit. It's like every town is the same, unfortunately. Is it like that in Australia as well?
Yeah, basically, yeah. If you go to any city, you go into the same supermarkets. Like, I do a fair bit of traveling and that, so I could be in any town or city, and I could go into a supermarket there, and if I wasn't, if I had short-term memory, I'd have no idea where I was because they all look exactly the same. The aisles, they're all the same, and but yeah, it's absolutely the case. And I used to have some closer peers. I'm reluctant, like acquaintances. I wouldn't call them friends anymore. Who used to always be, oh, you need to travel the world, and I'm like, no, I'm not really into that because I'm not into the whole touristy stuff and all that kind of thing. Like, and there's one particular guy I have in mind. He ended up doing all of that, and like, all he did was go to the cities all around the world. I'm like, man, you could have done that here. All you did was take photos of shit you can see on the internet, and you're not even going to look at those photos again anyway. You just wasted thousands of dollars. Like, if you're going to do the big travel, like, go somewhere, unique, and all those kind of cool, unique places are few and far between. And if you're going to do that kind of thing, like, you might as well go and live there or something like that, and spend some real time immersing yourself amongst it. But yeah, the point of that was, it's exactly the same here. Like, that Western world is the white world or whatever. Like, I'm reluctant to, like, I don't like saying I'm white or I'm Western or whatever, because that's the consumerist identity that I see, like what you said.
It's my friend Pat, he's got a good quote about America. He calls America nothing more than a Judeo-Masonic shopping mall. I've always got a good kick out of that. I thought it was a pretty fitting explanation. Let me answer this question real quick. Finn Wraith asks, don't the people in America now also argue the founding fathers were all a bunch of racist slave owners, so their opinions on guns doesn't matter? Yeah, that's par for the course. You are, I would say that you are correct there. Definitely. Charlie Shoestring says, fuck Dollar General. I agree. There's a fucking Dollar General within 10 miles of any spot in East Tennessee. They're fucking everywhere. Shit, there was something I was going to ask you, something relevant a second ago. It should come back to me in a second. I see that you're, I figured we could shift gears now. We could talk a little bit about the raw milk that you're consuming. Some good raw milk.
Oh, hi. Yeah, it's the good stuff.
I don't have a steady source to it. I know, like, a few months ago, I was able to get a few jugs from a lady that my girlfriend works with. But they've moved off or whatever, so it's hard for me to find it regularly. The raw milk, that's it's a very important thing, I believe, and you consume a ton of it. You've always got a source to it, don't you?
Yeah, and I got a pretty good relationship with a dairy farmer, and it's only improving. I've been sort of doing a bit of work for them, around the place. So they're a good source of milk and meat, which is arguably some of the most important resources to have access to. Aside from diesel, I need diesel to get there. That's the only trouble, because it's quite it's close, but it's far enough away that, like, I couldn't walk there in a day. Put it that way. But yeah, I just went there this morning. But I got a good access to it. We're lucky legally here. Like, you're not allowed to drink it, you're not allowed to drink it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they sell it as bath milk.
Yes,
So,
that's what they do up here.
I wish I had enough to bathe in it. I would, but I don't. But down in Victoria, and I think possibly in New South Wales, the other states, I know for sure in Victoria, they actually put a bittering agent in it so that people won't drink it, to make it so disgusting that they can't drink it.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
And like the argument is, it's dangerous because it's got all bacteria and all that sort of shit in it. And, there was a case of someone who died from some weak gay fucking immune system issue, and they just happened to have had some raw milk. So that was like the smoking barrel that they had to vilify raw milk. But I remember looking into it a while back, and like this person they were probably drinking raw milk to improve their health because they were so weakened and ill all the time anyway. So they're probably going to die anyway, and it was just a little bit too late, too little, too late kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, they use that, like you said, as a smoking gun. Like, oh, this is what killed this poor person when their health.
It's like that pandemic that's been going on. I don't know if we're allowed to say the word or not, but all these people that died, they're very careful. At least in the media here, they always say this person died with the coof. They don't say from. They don't like they're careful enough. They don't actually tell the lie that say they died from it. They say they died with it. They had a car accident. They tested positive. That's another one.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I'm sure that went on thousands of times up here in this country during the whole pandemic nonsense.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy. Are people down there where you live, around you, did they buy into the whole hysteria of the pandemic?
Yeah.
Were they intimidated, frightened by it?
Yeah, a lot of people were. Luckily for me, the most important, I wouldn't say the closest people, but the most important people in my life didn't buy into it. So it didn't affect me too much. But like I would forget about it constantly. And then I'd talk to my mother or I'd talk to my family, and then that's all they'd talk about. I'm like, I forgot this was a fucking thing. I can't believe you're still going on about this,
Yes.
But yeah, when I'd go to the more coastal regions, like where there's a bit more population, that's when I'd remember, because I'd start seeing all the masks and everything like that. And I remember I was on the highway down there, and I knew I was I knew I was close to the city because I saw these fucking retards driving by themselves in the car with the windows up wearing masks.
Oh God, yeah.
It was some bullshit, but like you can only laugh because not much else you can do about it, really.
No, man, I know that's. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago. The temperatures down here have been, well, in your case, it's up here, but they have been ridiculous. This has been the hottest summer that I've experienced since we moved from the northeast corner of Tennessee down to southeast Tennessee a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was up. I know there was a couple of days it got up to 102 down here, and it's really humid here in the South during the summer.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, it was just absolutely miserable. But I know I was in my truck. I'd finished my route. I was on my way home, and I was sitting at a red light, and I seen these 4 people. They were in like I think it was a Hyundai SUV of some sort, and they all had their masks on. And I'm like, it just made me, I was just like, what the fuck? How in the fuck are you able to breathe? Which I guess they had the AC on, but I've even seen it, which here in Tennessee, some people were hysterical about it, but it was a lot looser than, say up in New York or, California or some of these other places. It was quite a bit looser, the restrictions. But
I never had any dramas. Like a few times I'd go places. I generally stayed away from some sort of stores and that in the more like in the towns and everything when they had the stricter restrictions on, because like people who I'm familiar with, like I know and kind of semi-respect, I didn't want to go there and be like, put them in the awkward position and then have me think less of them. So I'm going to stay away just in case they're retarded about it, so that when it's all over, I don't hate them. Because I did have one occasion, I went to a local butcher and there was the mandatory masks thing happening, and I walked in, no mask, and just the attitude and the demeanor of the woman that was serving me was completely like just cold. And like, I don't care, but it's just that I knew why, and she's wearing her
Yeah.
mask and looking at me like I just came in there with my cock out or something like that. And then like I paid cash, and she like, oh, hardly wanted to touch it. No small
What the
talking. I think.
fuck?
And then, but then the next woman, the woman comes in behind me wearing a mask, and oh, hi, how you doing? And like all friendly and chatty. I'm like, yeah, you
You fucking whore. Shut the fuck up, bitch. Passive aggressive bitch.
yeah.
Oh man.
And it's the kind of person too. Like you don't have to know much about their personal life to tell that they're completely unhealthy. So you can see why they'd be terrified, because they're the kind of people who would be victim to it if it was as problematic as they said it was.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever it first I think crept into America, or maybe here in Tennessee. I think it was back in March of 2020, and at first I was just like, oh shit, this might be something about to kick off here, but after like a week or two, I was just like, man, fuck this mask bullshit. At first they tried to make us wear masks at work and stuff, because back then I worked in a warehouse. And I did it for like a day or two, and I'm like, God damn it, fuck this shit. It's too goddamn hot in here. I ain't wearing this goddamn shit. And finally, they didn't really push us after a day or two, because they're like, it's too fucking hot in here. These people ain't going to wear a fucking mask. And I'm like, man, it's going to run its course, But people were just, the hysteria didn't last long in my case, really. After about a week or two, I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to end up catching it sooner or later anyway. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to anticipate it. I'm not going to, fret over it. None of that nonsense.
Well, that's another thing too. I just started telling everyone I had it. If anyone seemed like they were remotely concerned, I just said, oh, yeah, I've already had it. It was nothing. And just like try and dismiss it like it was nothing to worry about. And they go, oh, what about this? Oh, yeah. And I said, I've had worse. And I did that a few times. I had a bit of a head cold. This is a few months ago now. And like I barely sniffled, slight sore throat, and I went to work with all these people that I don't normally see, and they're a bit more on the retarded side of things. And I told them, oh yeah, I got it. And like, oh really? I'm like, yeah, I know I had it, because I sneezed on the weekend, so I'm pretty sure that was it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole story, and that was the end of it. But
yeah,
I'm sure I've had it or contacted with it, but it's not a case of whether it was real. It's just whether or not it's a concern. Like
exactly.
In my book.
I think a lot of people had it, never went to the doctor or anything. I think there was a ton of cases. My dad, he had the same experience. He thinks he had it, I think, in the spring of last year, and his symptoms were very just identical to what me and the old lady had whenever we had it.
Yeah.
Just a pretty rough headache for a few days, and then we both got a sore throat, and but I mean, it was fuck. I loved it though. Hell, I got 2 weeks off. Hold on one second. Give me just a second. The old lady's trying to ask me something. What is it?
No worries.
What do you need?
We lost our taste and smell too.
Oh yeah.
Can you come in here for a minute?
I can. I'm talking right now.
You can't just take a 2-minute break.
I can't. Why? I'll be back. I'll be out there in a minute. Sorry about that. She's trying to get me to come out there and do something. I'm like, Miranda, I'm in a show right now. I've got Boar on. I've wanted to have him on for forever. So, I
can take it for a minute if it's something it's only quick or whatever. But
yeah, just give me just a minute. Give me just 1 second.
If you don't mind missing out on what I'm going to talk about, but it's something I sort of discussed with you anyway, so it's all good.
I was about to say, if you want to entertain the guest, I'll be just a second.
Yeah, I won't sing or dance or anything like that.
Oh, you feel free to.
Well, I was about to say before.
What do you need?
I've had worse sore throats from singing Bon Jovi songs loud than I probably had from any of the flu or the coof. But no, I saw Southern Nordics video, the testosterone video, and I thought it was pretty good. And that was something I wanted to add to or talk about, hormones and the influences on people and how important, understanding hormones are. And not so much about testosterone, because he's pretty well covered everything in that video. The only thing I didn't hear him say about was soy. Stay away from soy. But I think all the memes are pretty self-explanatory, that most people probably know to stay away from soy. But what I want to talk about is like female hormones and like estrogen and stuff like that, and contraceptives, because something that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, and how impactful it is on life and like just greater societies, like the contraceptive pill and similar chemical contraceptions that women can take, and how much of an effect they have on cause, not so much cause directly, but indirectly causing divorce, and like you see increased divorce rates. There's a whole bunch of things that lead to these kinds of outcomes, but like one of these things is the contraceptive pill. And what happens when women take the contraceptive pill or other similar things, I imagine, it changes their hormones and imbalances everything, and also therefore changes their behavior. And what this does is mean that, I'm looking at the chat now too, what damage do you think hormones in meat have on humans? Is it something to avoid? Not too sure about that as far as details go. But I'll carry on with the pill thing for the minute. So yeah, you didn't miss much. I was just introducing the talk about hormones, how I wanted to talk about hormones since your testosterone video.
Yeah.
And I almost made a video about it, but I couldn't be bothered. So I thought I'd save it because I knew we were going to do this. But yeah, the contraceptive pill in women changes their behavior due to hormone imbalances. And what this also does is changes what they find attractive in men, for good or for worse. Whether it be they find feminine men or whatever, the kind of partner that they find ideal when they're out perusing the social scene, trying to find a man, like whether or not they're hooking up promiscuously, like there's a presumption that that's the case when you're taking contraceptives, but I kind of understand that people do it out of convenience and stuff like that. I don't condone it myself, but some people are in relationships and they take it because they're not ready to have children or whatever like that. But what I see, I've observed it happen countless times, and I'm sure there's more of it than what I've observed, is like women will have the pill, they'll meet their partner, they say, I like you, okay, let's get married, let's get together, and they have a relationship, and they might be together for years, or they're married or whatever, and then they get married, and then of course after marriage comes children. They want to have the children, so they get off the pill. But then this changes the hormones again, and it reverts. At best, they revert back to what they would have been like had they not have had them in the first place. But what this does then is it changes back to the kind of partner they would be looking for. So they've got this man that they picked up when they were chemically different.
Yes.
And then they realize, okay, let's have children. Now we can have children now that I've stopped taking the contraceptive. Now it turns out I don't like you as a person because my behavior has completely changed, and possibly the man's behavior has completely changed as well. They have the kids. Then the sad story is they've got the kids. Now they don't like each other, and it's all too late. So my recommendation to avoid this, of course, is don't take them, because I don't think much good can come of it.
Yeah. One
way or the other. And I think if you're watching the video here, you're probably inclined to not be doing that kind of thing anyway, because I think this kind of sphere, so to speak, is welcoming to children, I should hope anyway. But yeah, if anyone knows anyone or is anyone watching this who's on it, I recommend getting off it ASAP.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it countless times, and every single person that I know that's been divorced, like I do little. This is where we go back to the scholarly thing. Like I don't have a credential, so to speak, but I am quite scientific. Like I've been doing research on various topics throughout my entire life. I ask people questions and I remember their answers. So I study things, and this is one of the things I study in conversation. I have conversations with people, and every single failed marriage or relationship that involves children, every single person I know in this situation, the woman was taking contraceptive pill when they met.
Yeah. There's a lot of.
Yeah. Oh, you go. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of unforeseen, side effects from it. Just like what you described, how women, if they're on the pill when they meet their mate, their hormones, like you just described, their hormones are different. They get off of it, and they're different. It's one of the interesting things in that video that I mentioned. I found a post on a Telegram that a guy was talking about how birth control is in the water. I mean, it's in the fucking water everywhere up here in the United States. I'm sure it's anywhere where this fucking shit is peddled.
Making the fucking frogs gay.
Yeah. Making the fucking frogs gay, turning the fish into trannies and shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fucking disaster.
Yeah, but it's real, yeah.
You know, and if you think about it, I believe the FDA approved the birth control pill here in the United States. I believe it was in 1960. It was sometime during the 60s. I want to say 1960, but I could be wrong. But it was definitely sometime during that decade.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit went on there, yeah.
Yeah, the 60s was just a true clusterfuck up here in the United States. But I mean, if you think about it, 1960, my father was born in 1959. So, and he'll be turning 63 here in just a couple of days. So, you know,
yeah, right.
I mean, this shit has been in our water supply for fucking 6 decades. And I think what we're seeing, you know, I think that's has a huge effect on the male population here in the United States. You know, something me and my buddy from college, we used to talk about back in like 2007. We lived together, and he was just like, man, you ever notice that like he called it the pussification of America. You know, I think there's a definite correlation between this, you know, decades.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's only one front that they're attacking on too. Like that's the chemical side of things. And then like not to mention the propaganda side. Like it's evident in the media and it's been increasing since I think it was most obvious in the 80s that it started creeping in all the androgyny and all that kind of thing. And that was like a stepping stone to, you know, where we're at now with like the trans movement and all that kind of thing. But I was talking to someone, I don't know who, it doesn't matter who it was now anyway, a few days ago. I remember watching, it was either made in the late 50s or the early 60s. There was these show, I saw it on TV when I was like 12 or something like that. It was years ago. But there was these 2 programs. They were just like 10-minute infomercials, I guess you could call them, or short documentaries. And there was one called Boys Beware, and there was one called Girls Beware, respectively. And I can't actually quite remember what the advice for the girls one was now, but the Boys Beware video was one big warning video about the dangers of homosexuals and how you need to be careful, beware of homosexuals. Like when you're walking down the street and the car pulls up, less sex equals less children. Sorry, I'm running on 3. I've had sex 3 times at least. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But this Boys Beware video, they were talking about like, you know, don't, when you're walking down the street and a strange man, they get like all these hypothetical situations. The man comes down and he offers you a ride and he says he's got beer in his truck. Don't get in because he could be a homosexual. But like the point of the story was what they weren't talking about homosexuals. They were talking about pedophiles. But back then there was no difference between the term pedophile and homosexual. It was presumably the same thing. And like, to me, that's like a marker in the social conscience of, you know, what is acceptable, because somewhere between then and like, I guess the 90s, over that generation, that 30 years, homosexuality became more acceptable. But then like it stepped away from the pedophilia thing, but it used to be completely synonymous at one point in time. And that's another thing, like I say about the studies, my unofficial studies. Like, you know, I went to school in a city. Like I did all my schooling years. I lived in a city for 20 years. Like I was born out, like I've lived out here in my early days, and then I got plucked out and lived in the city for 20 odd years. And then I got out as quick as I could, not quick enough. But naturally I was exposed to a lot of people. And, you know, I used to be a little bit more open-minded, not to saying I ever had a gay period or anything like that, but I mean, I used to talk to people who were identified as homosexuals or what have you. So I try and understand, you know. So I'd ask them questions, like all the disgusting things that no one else wanted to know about. And you know, explain to me. But
why are you a faggot? Why are you a faggot?
Basically,
why are you attracted to men's buttholes?
Yeah. Like, what is it that makes you think an asshole is a hot, beautiful thing that you want to slip your cock in there? Like, ugh. But anyway, I'd ask them more politely in a way that, you know, I know that they'd open up to me. And every single person, like every single homosexual guy that I spoke and asked to, was molested when they were a child. They were sexually abused by a homosexual when they were a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the best. I wouldn't say best. I'm not going to say best case situation, but like the more milder versions of that, like they were groomed when they were teenagers. Like they weren't necessarily raped or assaulted, but they were coerced. You know, and that's one of my like unofficial studies that I've done. But I couldn't tell you how many people I've had this conversation with because there were so many. But not like I would remember the number of people who weren't abused as children, and that number is zero. Like not one of them was not abused as a child. So I know there's a bit of a segue there, but
yeah, I was about to say
it's hormonal still. Yeah, it still affects your hormones.
Yeah, you know,
it's a coping mechanism to trauma, and I'd argue it's probably the same with the females. Like I say homosexual, I generally think of men, but like
yeah, that's what I do too. You know,
like female lesbians, I think it's probably the same. I haven't had the pleasure of discussing this with so many women, but the ones that I have, I speculate their story is the same. Not so much from other women, but you know, they've got some sort of fear or trauma from men that have abused them as children.
Yeah.
So that's their way of staying away from it again. But
yeah, I've heard of that.
I've noticed it.
My mom told me about a woman she used to know that was, you know, lesbian or whatever, and she had a really traumatic experience in her. I think it was her father, or it was one of her uncles or fathers that molested her horribly a few times. I think when she was a child, and you know, it makes it fucks up their trust. You know, it's it's a real tragedy. Basically, pedophiles, they should get the rope, of course. You know,
well, that's how pedophiles reproduce, by damaging children.
Exactly.
It's a psychological reproduction.
Exactly. Let's see. Since we're talking a bit about hormones and stuff, I figured we'd talk about your children. You could say, you know, I was shocked. I know we talked about this for a second earlier before we started streaming, but you know, I'm still in shock and awe that you had a son that weighed 11 pounds. That is a huge baby. And,
he's a big boy.
Was that your firstborn, your second, or your third child?
No, that was the second one. And to be fair, he was like a couple of weeks past his due date, so he had a little bit more time to grow. So, but even still, like you don't do that much growing in that last couple of weeks. So he's a big boy nonetheless. And he's now 3. But it was crazy watching him grow up because he was always so big, like just big, not just big, but like he's quite tall for his size. And like I got all the kids notches on the wall as they grow, and you know, like you mark how tall they are. And he is a good inch above what his older brother was at age 1 and 2, and respectively. And but I'd watch him when he seemed like he was 2 for so long, because like he was bigger. Like when he was 18 months, he was off the charts for size, height, weight. You know, they do their percentile statistics for size, like per whatever. Like he was off the charts, bigger than any 2-year-old when he was 18 months. You know, so he's got the giant's blood in him. Like he was born big, but a lot of it's probably from the raw milk, because he weaned himself off the breast milk when he was about 12 months old, and he was drinking 1 liter a day by his own. Wow. Like no one was forcing him. He was just into it. He wanted it. So that's like, what's 1 liter? That's a quart. Thereabouts a quart a day.
Wow.
So I had to budget for that. You know, like I was like, oh, this. People say, how much milk do you guys go through? And I'd tell them in a week, and they're like, oh yeah. And I said, and then I'd say like, oh, plus another, 10 liters for everyone else, because they thought I was talking about the whole family when I said about my habit. Yeah. But but he was doing a good 7 to 10 liters a week himself. So, and
that's impressive. I don't know how your wife was able to keep up during those early days. You know, I mean, holy hell.
Yeah. Well, luckily he was a pretty good baby. Other than the fact that he was born like came out elbow first, like ready to wrestle. So that was a bit of a problem for him.
That's a prophecy right there. That's a prophecy, I believe.
And he's like really like bull-headed, so to speak.
What did you just say a second ago? You cut out for just a second.
I said he came out. He's quite bull-headed, so to speak. Like he's definitely somewhat like a large ruminating animal, so to speak, as far as his behavior goes. Like I remember when he was a baby. I can't remember how young he was now. Like I was holding him, and he used to he'd headbutt me. We'd headbutt each other as a game. He liked doing it, so he'd get harder and harder. So I just meet him in the middle and match. And it got to the point where like it was starting to hurt me. but like I didn't let him. Like I didn't let him. I didn't let him know. Obviously, I just kept going. I kept going, and then it got to a point like he sort of like hesitated and kind of. He didn't whimper. He just implied discomfort, and I thought, oh yeah, you've had enough of that now. And then he just toned it back a bit, but then continued to headbutt me more and more.
Yeah.
So the intensity went down, but the frequency didn't stop. But yeah. He's kind of. I wouldn't know. I can't say he's my favorite. Like I like them all for different reasons.
Yeah. They all have their unique aspects.
Yeah, like the eldest one, he's pretty witty, being a bit older and everything like that. But I even look back to when he was 3, like he was intellectual at 3. Like he plays music now, like not professionally or anything like that, obviously. But I mean, he's self-taught. He can hold a beat playing the drums, and he's 6, and he's never had a lesson in his life. Like he can play drums better than me. Not that I'm anything to measure by, really, but yeah, he's the witty one. I like him for that, and he looks like his mother, so it's kind of weird, but I like him for that too. Yeah. And then the second one, he looks basically like me, but bigger and better. He's what I should have been. And then, so I like to say, yeah, and he's just big and tough and whatnot. And then the third one, he's the good-looking one. So.
Oh, well, there you go.
But he's
3 Chads.
He's a mongrel.
Yeah,
they've all got their strengths. Yeah.
Hell, the savior of the white race may have came from your loins, boy.
Maybe. I'm trying.
Yeah. Let's see. What else? We've talked about you drinking raw milk there. What else? What's your diet like, basically? I know we used to talk about fitness a lot in the old Discord group. But as far as diet goes, what do you eat in a typical day, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, I do I don't know if it's quite the foundation of my diet, but I do a gallon of milk a day, at the very least. And I generally these days I only eat 1 meal a day, and I just eat of an evening. And that's probably like, I'm reluctant to say because I've never gone on record saying I'm on the carnivore diet or anything like that. But what I eat is congruent with what they'd call the carnivore diet. I'm probably pretty relaxed. Like I'm not one of these Puritans who says don't eat certain things because it's not carnivore, and like I'm not trying to be edgy about it. But I refrain from grains. I don't eat grains at all, and I don't eat vegetables, and I don't eat leaves. So that doesn't really leave much. I'll eat fruit, meat, and dairy basically, and eggs. But predominantly milk and meat. I do eat some other things. Like I don't mind onions and garlic and stuff like that. Like people will go, oh, they're toxic. Well, not so much. I like onions just for flavor, to be honest. It's something I used to eat a lot of all the time. And I kind of did go down the carnivore route from more like a puritanical, not puritanical. I was strict with it for about a year or 2, probably closer to 2 years actually, but mainly from an experimental point of view because I wanted to just see how it would go.
Yeah.
And I had 0 issues. It was the healthiest I've ever been in my life. It was the first time I managed to put on weight, like good weight, which I think most of that's got to do with milk intake more than anything.
Yeah.
But I overall I was eating less than I ever did because I was just cutting out things that, to explain simply, basically all the other stuff I was eating was competing for absorption. So I didn't really, like people think when you go and eat carnivore diet or whatever, it must be so expensive and too much meat and blah, blah, blah. Like I don't eat any more meat than I used to. I just don't eat the other stuff. And I managed to put on like healthy weight. Yeah. And because nothing's competing for absorption. So, I eat a lot of beef.
Yes.
I like lamb. Beef and lamb are like,
lamb is delicious. Lamb is
delicious. That's the only meat I buy. But
yeah, that's something I rarely get to try. I haven't eaten any lamb in probably a few months. It's kind of a treat for me, I guess. Let's see. My friend Space Hopper Mark asks, "Why no vegetables?" What's your thoughts on that? Just if you want.
They're expensive.
That. Yeah,
they're expensive.
They are.
No, well, like there's a few different reasons why, and like from a dietary perspective, I experimented not having them, And that's what a lot of people say, oh, you need the vegetables, you need the fiber and all this kind of stuff. And there's a multitude of reasons why that's not true. Like I'd basically be on a carnivore diet every year for I don't know how many years now, because that would be the winter diet. I always try and eat what's in season, and I've been trying to be mostly self-sufficient for as long as possible. So for me, that meant in wintertime, basically nothing but meat and whatever stored, like potatoes and onions kind of thing in the winter. So all those nice vegetables weren't really available in the winter. But I mean, there's a couple of different angles you can look at it from. But my main argument now is it's difficult to grow vegetables. It's much easier to grow meat. If you have to move, like for whatever reason, if you're living nomadically, you're not going to take your vegetables with you. That's a lot of shit to carry.
Yeah.
The meat can walk behind you. You can ride on top of it. It's so much more practical. And really, the term vegetable, like when you look at the definition of vegetable now, it includes the word food. But the word food and the definition of the word vegetable didn't come in. That's maybe 100 years old in the definition of vegetable. Like it had nothing to do with food once upon a time. And the people who argue that, scholarly appeal to authority, who's the right history to be following there. But, historically, vegetables have usually been paupers' food, especially grains.
Yes.
So, g'day, Tom. Haven't heard from Tom for a while.
Yeah, he caught the show. Tickled to death
Old
to see
Uncle
him.
Tom.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Tom.
But like, I got no problem with people who want to eat vegetables. Like, I'm not going to say don't do that. I do advocate against grains because, like, I know I think most people shouldn't eat grains. At least not every day anyway. Like, you might get away with it here and there. But I think the long-term effects of eating a grain-heavy diet are so hard to observe unless you really extract yourself from it. It's kind of one of those things. It's an epiphany you have to have. And, like, I'm not going to try and sell it to anyone. Like, if you're curious, try it. Like, all the things that people say about the diet and, like, the dangers of this and that. Like, I should have died from scurvy years ago. With a lack of fiber, I should have died from bowel cancer years ago. There's a lot of stuff that they tell you that you need to do, but it's really based on nothing. Like, one of the things, for example, is they tell you how much water you need to drink in a day. I don't know about what they tell you in America, but in Australia, like, I managed to find the source for the study, and the source said the basis for how much water they tell you to drink in a day is based on the average consumption of water per it's how much water people drink on average per day. So they tell you that's what you need to do, but other than that, there's no basis for it. Like I live in a pretty hot place. Like, I think you said, what did you say? Hot days for you is like 102 degrees or something like that. That's just under 40 Celsius. Yeah. We'll get hot days. We'll get 50 here, which is like 120 Fahrenheit.
Yeah,
and
I couldn't imagine the heat down there.
I might, and like for the last, and this is partially an experimental thing, but mostly preference. Like, because I like to drink a lot of milk. Like, I'm not short on fluid, but I probably, on average, I would drink a cup of water a day, and that's it. Even in peak summer in the hottest time, I might drink up to 4 cups when it's really hot. But that's only because I run out of milk.
Yeah.
So the whole you need water for hydration, I think it's a bit of a meme. And like, I work pretty hard physical labor in the sun, so if anyone was going to need the water, it would be me. And like, I haven't died.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not scientific, I don't know. But yeah, so why no vegetables was the question. I'm rambling, but why no vegetables? They're expensive. If you can grow your own and you like them, that's great. But a lot of people say they like taste and all this, but then it's actually a pro-vegan kind of argument I'll use. An argument that vegans have used against meat in the past. They said, you see a pig, would you eat the pig if there was no spices, or you couldn't cook, or you had no tools? I said, yeah, I'd eat the fucking pig. Yeah, of course I would. But then I say, well, okay, would you eat a raw cauliflower? Would you eat an uncooked potato covered in dirt and stuff like that? And like, people say they like vegetables. I'm like, probably you like butter, or you like cheese, or you like one of these animal products that you put on there.
That's a good
point. I do too. Like, all the things, like, so take those things away, and like, I don't think you need to eat everything raw, but if you're going to use that as an argument, think about what you really like and why you like it. It might not be what you think. So, but I'm laughing financially wise. People say about the diet being expensive. Old Indian word meaning poor hunter. Exactly. I failed to mention that. And that's something that it was a pauper's food. It was vegetables was something that peasants used to eat because they were restricted. They weren't allowed to hunt meat because it belonged to the king. You couldn't hunt the deer because that belongs to the crown. So peasants would eat vegetables plus, the old chicken that doesn't lay eggs anymore if they could catch a hare or something like that. And that was,
meager
it's a means
scraps,
to an end. It's starvation food. Yeah.
Yeah. Eat your gruel, peasant.
Yeah.
Eat your goy slaw. Eat your goy slaw.
Exactly.
Oh man. Let's see. That was a question I was going to ask you. I figured we'd segue into. I figured I would ask you this. This is a question that's commonly asked in these circles: is what led you to your views that you have today? Would you say what was your red pill journey? I guess is how people would phrase this question.
It depends on what you call my views, I guess, and what the red pill is. Because some of these things I'd say I've known my whole life. Like from the paganism perspective, it was something that was inherent. It's in my blood. It was a feeling that I couldn't explain. It's a thing that I already knew, but I didn't have the words for it. On the spiritual side of things, I've always been like a very, spiritual person. And I've had a lot of experiences that would be considered supernatural or what have you when I was a kid and growing up and even as an adult. So that kind of thing. What really led me to where I am on that was reading about Norse and Germanic mythology, because it was something that I'm always seeking the meaning of life and all this kind of stuff, or the truth of life growing up, and that led me down all sorts of things, like got into the cringe occult and all sorts of stuff like that. And I was into Egyptian mythology for quite some time. And there's a lot of things in that I'm like, okay, I like this. There's something to this. And the whole eternal life and reincarnation and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it all kind of made sense, but there was something not right until I went down like the Norse Germanic path, because that was something that wasn't really available to me as a kid. Like, you'd learn about paganism or non-Abrahamic religions growing up. Basically, all we had was like Roman and Greek mythology, like and all that kind of stuff. And that stood out to me. And that was something I was drawn to as well. There's something not quite right about it, and I couldn't put my finger on it until I was in my early 20s, I guess, when I had like the internet. The internet was something that really helped because everything was available. Like we were limited with our encyclopedias when I was growing, because I grew up no internet until I was like a teenager. I'm in that sort of cusp. Like I'm about your age, so like that same sort of generation.
I think we're both millennials, rough within a few years of each other.
Well, I'll get into that. I'll get into that after. But technically, I am. But I'm also not in a way. But the internet. The internet is a thing that made more information available to me, which meant I could go down that Germanic path, and I had all these ideas and concepts in my head from all these experiences that I've had, and I started reading all this stuff and learning the lingo a bit more. And then as soon as I read it in this language, I'm like, that's exactly what I'm trying to find words for. It's just like the words were already there. Like. I'm not as arrogant as to say I knew all this stuff already necessarily, but like I did. Like it was stuff that I'd already known, I'd already felt, I'd already thought, and it was just all the words. It was already done for me. Somehow I had this aha moment. So that was kind of what started me with this channel, was to kind of translate into normie speak, I guess, understanding mythology and how it actually is relative to everyday life, and it's not as supernatural as whatever people say. That's the atheistic perspective, and it's really not. But that's one of the things that's hard to explain as well.
Kind of,
it makes it all the more amazing. But it's likewise, it's not fantasy like the shit you watch on the movies are, like the Lord of the Rings stuff, and that's why I don't really care for that stuff, because it makes everything seem so more magical. When in reality the words are something much more that people take a literal meaning to the parts that aren't supposed to be literal, and they take like a fantastical view to the parts that are supposed to be literal.
Yeah.
I guess that's the quickest way to say it. So
It
that's
is. It's
how
a
I,
good point.
yeah. So that's where I'm at with that kind of thing, and if that makes sense to answer the question. As far as the political perspective goes, um, I still
See,
maintain. Yeah,
I,
you go.
I, I
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was just going to interject real quick. I was going to say that your path to it kind of seems similar to mine. Um,
yeah,
you know, paganism is kind of how I got pulled into, I guess you could say, white nationalism, or my
yeah,
political views. Paganism was the starting point in my journey. I've talked to other people in these distant spheres. Some of them get into this through more like white nationalism, and then they explore all these other
yeah,
the religious or the spiritual aspects of such things. I think we do have a similar path in that regard. Definitely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How long have you had your YouTube channel? You've been making videos for what, about 4 or 5 years now? 6 years maybe?
Yeah, it was sort of circa 2016, I think, 17. I've had the channel as long as YouTube's been around. I was trying to think about that today. I think I made it in like 2008 or something like that. And I
Yeah.
figured it was so that I figured it was so I could observe some sort of 18 plus content, whatever that was. I don't know. So it was basically an anonymous account most of the time, and I didn't really think of it. And I never, it's funny, this comes back to the political thing in a minute, but I never went to the comments section. And the odd time I would, whatever, it didn't matter what I was watching, you get to the comments section, and there'd always be something that would be, racist. And I'd always laugh back then. I'd be like, oh, why are they always talking about that in the comments section? And I didn't work it out, because that was something that was a bit more of an epiphany to me, really more recently in the last 10 years, as to, who pulls the strings in the world and all that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
but I started making videos in 2018, I think. So what's that, 4 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it started off because, I was getting a bit more, I started getting into the comments section, and I wanted to have discussions about stuff that, I didn't know a lot of people who were open to such discussions in real life. So to me, it was like a networking thing.
Yeah.
And I was making comments and not getting any responses. So I thought, okay, let's look at it from someone else's perspective. This is an anonymous account, no profile picture, no substance. Why would they respond? So I started, I put a couple of videos up just to sort of put myself out there for some credit, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then I thought I'd use it as a platform to practice my public speaking,
Yeah.
to put words to my thoughts, basically, to practice talking about the things that are hard to speak about. Not so much politically, but it was a channel for the ineffable, I guess you could say. And I used it then as a means to answer questions that people were asking about certain things often.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about this? And rather than typing, I go, okay, we'll just watch this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
this is my thoughts in short. It's a summary, I guess.
Oh yeah, you do.
But
You
yeah,
do I really enjoy your videos. I was watching some of your older ones from 2018. I didn't go all the way back to your earliest. I was like, oh shit, he's been doing this for a while. Back in 2018, I was damn meth head basically, working on ruining
yeah,
my life, poisoning myself. But you know, you made an interesting video that I watched earlier, and I've made a couple of videos talking about dreams that I've had before. And
yeah,
it was one of your early videos. You were talking about how we were. It was a unique perspective. It was like how we are working to be able to dream securely. You want to elaborate more on that?
yeah,
Um,
sure. Yeah, yeah. This is one of the probably, well, maybe not the most important thing that I've said, I guess, but it's very important. Like, here's another thing. I'm a self-proclaimed expert on sleeping and dreams. All right.
yeah,
I've done a lot of experimenting with sleep deprivation, sometimes by choice, sometimes not. Um, and you learn a lot about what's important in life when you spend a lot of time not sleeping. You might have had some similar sort of epiphanies with your meth experiences, staying up for
Oh
a few
God, yeah,
days.
stay up for
I've
5 or
never
6 days.
Yeah. I've never
Horrible.
I haven't been there myself. I haven't done that, but I guess I'm sure there'd be some overlap there as far as what our experiences are, just from the lack of sleep alone.
Yes.
Because it is so important. To give you a quick bit of backstory, I got quite ill when I was 15 years old, and I was delirious, bedridden for nearly a week. I was quite sick. I lost a lot of weight, and I didn't have much to lose. But after that, I came good. But I had chronic fatigue for months and months and months after that. So I was sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night, and I wake up, I'm still tired. I go to school, and I just want to sleep at school. And I got fed up with that, and I thought, well, if I'm going to be tired all the time, I might as well not waste my time sleeping. So I just started staying up all night, and that's when I started getting into meditation and stuff like that. And I spent a lot of time reading on the internet, so that sort of ties in with me finding my groove with the paganism side of things.
Yeah.
But that was a major experience for me, sleep deprivation, what you can and can't survive on, and the whole 8 hours you need it or you'll die. And part of my research when I was not sleeping was, someone said that if you don't sleep for 3 days, 72 hours, you'll die. So I thought, challenge accepted. So I managed to go for 3 days without sleeping just to see if I could, okay, well, if it means death, so be it. I'm willing to put my body on the line. This is the true scientific way. So I tried it. I didn't die. And actually, that was the thing that got my sleep back into a healthy cycle, because I slept really well after that. And it regulated me again. Yeah. And then years later, I was working ambitiously because I have a mortgage. I had to borrow money to buy my property. And when I was in my early 20s, I was ambitious, and I was like, I don't want to pay debt. Still to this day, I hate the idea of usury and money lending, but it was a means to an end. My very first video, actually, I explained why I went into debt and everything like that. So that's another story. If anyone's curious, go back to the very, very first video. But in doing so, I didn't want to be in debt for 20 to 30 years or whatever. So I thought, I'll work my ass off and I'll pay it off in 5 or 10. And so I tried that. I failed. I went backwards. Part of doing that was I literally worked day and night for periods of time. And the longest I ever did was 158 hours straight. So I was working a day job. My only downtime was driving to my night shift job. And this is all physical labor too, mind you.
Yeah.
And so I was driving backwards and forth. And my biggest week was 158 hours. And it was basically 6 days straight.
Yeah.
And day 3 you start dreaming with your eyes open, and day 3 to day 6 is basically a blur, but you start going through all these processes while you're awake, so your body will start dreaming anyway. And I wasn't short of nutrition. I was eating constantly while I was doing. A lot of the people that I was working with thought I was on meth or whatever, because a lot of the guys doing the night shift were doing that anyway just to stay up, but I was just eating. And I used to eat the caffeine tablets, the no-dose things. I don't know if you've got them over there.
Yeah, we've got
but that's what
similar.
So that's what kept me up. So I did have a substance, I guess, but I wasn't on the amphetamines or anything like that. But so I learned a lot about what was important, and in and amongst all of that, I've always had very good memory and connections with my dreams. So part of my thing when I was a teenager, I started doing this thing that sounds gay, but it's called a dream journal. And I was looking into trying to, do astral projection and out-of-body experiences and all that sort of stuff. So in doing so, I really connected with my dreams more than ever. I already remembered them pretty well. But it made me realize the importance of it and all the kinds of experiences you have in your dreams. A lot of people don't remember them. And at best, if you do remember them, you have nothing in your waking life to associate them with. So you would just assume that they're arbitrary nonsense.
Yeah.
But you have, when you go into the dream state, when you have your rapid eye movement, your REM, this is arguably the most important phase of sleep. You're actually burning energy. that's the point of the argument of as to why it's certainly not a redundant function. Like this is to say, it's just like your brain's just filing some thoughts. You can file thoughts while you're awake passively, and like all that sort of stuff. Like it's not an argument for dismissal of importance of dreams. And yeah, like your body, depending on where you come from an evolutional perspective, like we would not evolve this function if it was pointless. Like everything our bodies do is meant to be more and more efficient. Like we grow certain limbs or we discard certain organs if they're not useful. Like that's how evolution is explained to function. Like it's all about survival. And if dreams weren't crucial for our survival, and they're demanding on our energy supply, like we wouldn't be doing it. And that in itself is enough reason for me. But then plus the fact that I've actually, like I went into the video I know you're talking about, like a lot of my dreams, I've had a lot of premonition style dreams, like a lot of times where you have like the deja vu the next day. It's like, yeah, I already dreamt this yesterday. Knowing what's going to happen before, like that's the best thing about visions and prophecies and all this sort of stuff. You don't know what they are and what's to come true until it's already happened. So it's kind of like, it's always hindsight. So I was like, oh yeah, I knew about that, but couldn't do anything about it. Had I have known that was a vision of the future, I might have, changed something. But then that's like a fate versus free will kind of argument, then that we could get into first. So, but no, I definitely think that it's important. And then you look at all the animals, like apex predators, all the animals that have the least amount of worries. What do they do all day? They sit around sleeping.
Yeah. I mean, I catch my dogs, they sleep, they nap, and they have dreams during it. Like sometimes I'll see our little dog, he'll be up in the bed. He'll just start kicking and, kind of bark. Like he's not barking fully, but he's making noises and you can see his eyes moving behind his eyelids and such. Definitely.
When they go sleep running. Yeah. Mine do the same. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Dreams are very important. I think, that's something interesting. I was really interested to find that video of yours earlier today because, I believe dreams is, it's an important channel for us, why else would we do it? And, there's definitely a metaphysical aspect to it all.
Yeah, definitely. See, one of the ones I've had too, I made a couple of videos about dreams, but I think the one you're referring to was a much older one where I talk about just the importance of them. There was one somewhere in the middle there where I shared some more personal experiences from dreams, where that's where I've had some of most of my past life memories actually from dream format. But I had them, these were dreams that I had when I was a child, but I didn't actually quite know what they were. I thought they were just like adapted or similar memories to something that I'd already done in this life. Like, for example, the one I made a video about this, but I'll quickly explain it now. Like one of these dreams I had years ago, I was at my grandparents' house. Like this is where my grandmother lives now.
Yeah.
And I remember walking around this is like the most important part. I remember walking around the veranda on the house, like the balcony. And I remember like coming to the door and like even like the flaky paint on the door and opening the door and just like the layout of the house. And when I had the dream when I was a kid, I was like, oh, that's like grandparents' house, but it's a little bit different. It's similar, but it's just a quirky dream. Don't think much of the differences. But as I grew up old, like I've worked in construction and stuff like that, and I start to have a bit more understanding of like renovations. And like I can go into an old home now and I can look at it and go, okay, I know there used to be a wall there and there used to be door. Like you can see where changes have been made. And then I sort of connected the dots many years later when I was an adult and I was looking at my grandmother's house one night and I asked her then, I'm like, there used to be a wall there, right? And then about how what we call the sleep out, like that used to be a veranda. And she's like, yeah. And I said, then I asked her about the door and the paint and the flakes and all this kind of stuff. And then she confirmed basically my memory that I have of the house. And the house was renovated when my mother was a little girl, was when the house was renovated. So there's no way that like I'd never witnessed the house like that with my own eyes. And it was happened when my mother was so young that I know she wouldn't remember because her memory's terrible. Yeah. But like where did this vision come from? Man, it could be a coincidence that I just saw it like it just so happened to be. But the amazing detail and everything of that sort of made me realize I've seen this before one way or the other. And that was the beginning of me realizing other dreams and other events, and they all sort of started coming back to a particular person in my family that consequently died before I was born, and how that process works. So
that's blood memory, man. That was a true blue case of it right there, if I've ever heard of one. That's
yeah. So how do we get on to that? So that's one of the things. Oh, that was about the dreams. So that's the importance of dreams. And and blood memory is this eternal cycle, which is like literally cyclical. Like people try and imagine timelines as linear versus cyclical, but if everything goes round and round in circles, it's exactly the same. But as a way of sort of creating a diagram to understand the way I look at time, yes, it's cyclical, but it's not two-dimensional. So it's not a neat ring that just goes round and round and round. It's also like it's moving this way as well, and there's slight changes as you go, and therefore it's infinitely growing. So there'll be key points. I'll share another story in a second. There's key points that repeat as per the generations, but the details change. Yes. And if this goes on infinitely and eternally, imagine you could be having dreams from things that have happened thousands of years ago, and you have absolutely no way of associating it with anything because we have no evidence in our waking life of that history. So I'm not to say that all dreams are past memories or all, but I'm open to that idea because there's no, like, it's one of those things you can't prove it either here or there, but I entertain the thought. And like another one I've had on repeat, well, I used to have it on repeat all the time. It was when I'd been with my partner for a few years. I had this dream. Have you ever, like, I don't like quoting Hollywood shit because I try and think the bad stuff out of existence. But have you ever seen that movie, 50 First Dates? 50 First Dates, that Adam Sandler film?
Adam Sandler, yes. I've seen it before, yes.
Yeah, like every day he has to make her fall in love with him again and all that sort of thing. Like I had a dream, like I used to have a repetitive dream like that, and it spun me out because it was before that film came out. So I was dreaming on repeat, like I had to work the problem out. So I sort of had the short-term memory in a way. But the main story in the dream, everything, like this is throughout the whole dream. I had to find her. I had to tell her who I was. I had to convince her that we're soulmates or whatever. We were, we're significant others. And she was always in some sort of peril, like the princess kind of thing, like the damsel in distress. Like I had to find her. I had to convince her that we're in love, and I had to rescue her. And then at the end of it, she'd die, or normally she'd die. And then it'd just repeat. And it was in all these different like settings and situations throughout time. And I can't say for sure, but I dare say that's a path that I have taken before in a life past, and I'll probably do again. That's one of the most important things.
That's fascinating, man. I could listen to you talk about these dream stories all day, man. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. Something I wanted to add too is, back during the years of meth, as I called it, for about 3 years, I was on that shit pretty heavy, pretty hard. I was doing it, every day, every other day. It was rare that I went a few days without any. But, during this time, I didn't dream any for roughly 3 years. I mean, it wasn't because, I slept, back when I was doing that shit, I would stay up 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 days. But whenever you crash, you're not just going to go to sleep for like 8 hours and, pop back up and be ready to go again. You're going to be out for a day. I know there was one time I slept for like almost 48 hours straight. I'd been up for a few days. And during this time, though, I don't know if I dreamed. I could have dreamed, but I had no memory. Like I would wake up. And I mean, that's something, that I noticed. Your health you're in horrible shape when you're poisoning yourself like this. But that's something that I noticed is that I didn't dream any during those years. I couldn't remember any. It wasn't until I got cleaned up and we moved down here that, it took, about 2 or 3 months where I hadn't done any. I I remember I had a dream and I was like, holy shit, I actually just had a dream that I can remember. It's coming back. And,
Yeah.
something interesting is that since my hair has gotten longer, it's like I have more vivid, I'm able to remember my dreams more. Like I have more wild dreams, like especially just over the last 4 or 5 months. And I'm like, I'll wake up and I'm like, holy shit, that's a wild dream. And I can remember it's such detail. I can remember, I don't know if growing your hair long has any sort of metaphysical bearing on such things, but I know I was talking in Apollonian Germ's server with someone like this was probably about 8-9 months ago. They was like, your hair's getting long. Have you noticed anything, spiritual or anything about your dreams? And I was like, yeah, I noticed. It seems like I dream more here lately, and I'm able to remember it.
That might have been me, actually. I remember that conversation.
Yeah, I think it was you. Yeah,
yeah. I've been through that too. Yeah. There's definitely something to your hair, and I noticed when I've had this beard, like I've trimmed it and whatnot, but I've basically been a bearded man since, like full bearded for, I don't know now, 12 or more years.
Yeah.
And I noticed my sense of smell. Could be that shit sticks to my mustache, I don't know, but like I can smell things.
Yeah.
I can smell, but it's like things that aren't like I can go into a place and I can tell, like, okay, I'll be working with people. I'm like, someone was eating onions last night, and they're like, what? I said, who had a big night on the onions? And then someone was eating the onions, and I can tell what people like. There was a guy the other day, like, I said, who's been eating all the spinach? I could smell spinach, and it was just I could tell that this guy was secreting something out of the spinach that he ate while he was working. I'm like just as an example, but I definitely correlate that with the beard. Maybe I don't know if it's the whole beard or the mustache or whatever, but like I always used to, when I was younger, I had a goatee for years.
Yeah,
because I was cool as shit. And but I didn't have them when I say full beard. Like I didn't start growing a mustache until about 2010, and that's when I noticed the smell. So it might be more so the mustache thing. And but yeah, definitely with your hair and extrasensory perception, I think there's something to it. I can't quantify it, but
no, you're exactly. Definitely. Yeah, my buddy Yonder there, he says the old mountain healer woman back in Kentucky told me that your hair is a physical extension into the spiritual world. I've done a fair amount of research into these old rituals that they would do here in Appalachia. And your hair, like back then, they called it doctoring someone is what they would call it. They're like, oh, he's been doctored. That means they've done some sort of ritual, to either heal him or harm him, you could say. And a lot of these people, they had the superstition. Whenever you would cut your hair, you had to, dispose of it. You didn't want to leave your hair if you went to a barber or someone, you didn't want to leave your hair laying around because your hair is used in a lot of these sort of rituals.
Yeah.
Healing, or they can be used in rituals for harm, you could say. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny you say that now. I don't think I can be incriminated for this, but I had a guy in high school I didn't like for various reasons, and it was when I was going through my no sleep stage and my occult readings, when I was just mucking around with stuff, and I made a voodoo doll just for shits and giggles. And funnily enough, the voodoo doll's name was Mr. Giggles as a joke. And this guy I didn't like, I obtained some of his hair and I punished the fuck out of this voodoo doll. And he went to the hospital the next day with appendicitis. So could be coincidence.
Man, I think there's something to that,
Maybe.
Cursed him.
Oh, yeah.
He's lucky he just ended up with appendicitis. I mean, I thought you was going to tell me he ended up dead or something. I was like, holy shit.
No, I think he's still alive to this day. Still don't like the guy, but yeah, it's all in the past now. But
the war.
No, but with the hair thing too, like I didn't cut my hair for years at a time, and I used to measure checkpoints, or rather, I used to do what I call hairy oaths, kind of like what's his name? Was it Harold Finehair?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he said he wouldn't cut his hair until he's king of Norway. Yeah. And I did that. It was all martial arts oriented stuff for me when I was sort of I was always serious about it, but when I was getting to like more notable points in my martial arts career, so to speak, I said I'm not going to cut my hair until, you know, I get the next belt or until I win this or do that and whatever. So like I spent between 2003 to 2017, I had 3 haircuts.
Oh, really?
So yeah, and like I remember things based like that sort of help. I like to use different things for marking like moments in time, but I kind of remember periods of time based on my haircut as well, because so although they kind of it gets to a point where it's just long, I still remember what it felt like. You know, it's like I remember experiencing something, and I know what my hair felt like at that time, so I can narrow down that memory to within a couple of years, depending on what hair I was wearing at the moment in that moment.
Yeah.
And funnily, you said about keeping or discarding your hair. I kept all those, like I plaited before I ritualistically cut, and then I kept them, and I've got them in a box still somewhere, so someone could have a voodoo party if they got into that.
Oh gosh, yeah. You know, that's a vulnerability. You need to get rid of your hair. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, that's really interesting. You know, there's so much stuff that, you know, we could talk about this sort of thing. I figured we would segue into a question that I like to ask a lot of people. What do you think our race's future is? Like, what do you think our prospects are? Are you pessimistic? Are you optimistic? What do you think about it? What do you think about our precarious situation our people are in?
Well, people like to talk about white pills and black pills and stuff like that. Me and a couple other guys, I don't know who exactly coined it. I could claim it. I like to talk about the real pill, which is somewhere in between. You know, it could be like halfway between black and grey. Like a lot of the times, you talk about the bad things that are happening and all the problems that we're faced with. And if you try and look at it from a realistic point of view, you get accused of being black pilled or black pilling. But the people who tend to think that way as a response to some of the reality pills you give them, they're truly living with their head in the sand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I like to dish out. Well, I don't dish out much lately, but I like to try and give out white pills. But then the people who give out the white pills tend to be completely ignorant to how much trouble we are in or could very well be in. So it's somewhere in between. Like I like to say I'm a realist, and I always expect the worst but hope for the best. And now at the end of the day, it's a game of survival. Some people are playing short-term survival. Some people are playing long-term survival. And I think if you get caught in one or the other too much, you're going to fail on the other. So I'm really kind of all about balancing out these things. So like some people like to just talk about nothing but reincarnation and all that long-term kind of stuff. But that's all well and good. But if you've got no comprehension on how to survive in the now, whether it be through stupidity with, you know, for example, maybe something like your diet or some sort of negligence that you take in your life that will destroy you short term, which is ultimately going to destroy you long term, it's no good knowing about the age-old secrets of the universe so that you can live forever. You're not going to live forever. I used an analogy a while back. It's like it's no good knowing about the moon phases if you don't know how to breathe underwater. You know, and it's no good being able to breathe underwater if you likewise don't know about the seasons, because all these things you have to have a little bit of knowledge about everything. So
balance
like
is key.
people, and like a lot of people have the might is right mentality, and I'm not against that necessarily. Seem to be living in the now and the short term, like we got to do something now, but you know, you got to pick your battles. And if you do the right move at the wrong time, it's the wrong move. And I figure if you're faced with a decision where the outcome could be bad in both situations, most of the time the best thing to do is do nothing and just observe and wait. So I like to promote the old, like the gray man And it was funny with the white pill and the black pill thing. It's like, well, they go the grey man route, like sort of live with 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. So, on one hand, I'm counting on this fantastical idea of total societal collapse, Mad Max. I'm ready for that. I would love that. But the reality is, the apocalypse is not going to be televised. They're not going to send out a memo to say, okay, there's total society collapse, everyone. Time to just start living like you dreamed of.
Chimp out.
It ain't going to happen. Like we're in a global depression right now. It's been happening for the last three to 4 years, but they don't tell you that. They want you to think everything's okay so that you keep consuming and the machine keeps turning. And the depression is something you'll look back on in 10, 20 years and you go, holy shit, how did we survive that? And but on the flip side of that, like, you've also got to function within society. So thinking you're just going to go and bug out in the mountains and you're going to survive that way, that ain't going to work either, because if you don't try and throw a spanner in the works of the machine, it's inevitably going to grow and it will consume you in your little hole, which is another kind of head in the sand type of mentality. So you really need to be using a little bit of both. Like, we don't need to rebuild. I'm sort of steering away from the question, not intentionally, but I'll try and come back to it. So,
oh, you're fine.
I think the future for our people, well, it depends on who our people are, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I've got a common interest with a lot of different people, but ultimately, at the end of the day, of what makes we and what makes us, there's always going to be there's an infinite us and them. And I think if you talk to someone for long enough, you're going to end up splitting hairs and you'll end up hating each other. If there's two people, you'll end up fighting. If there's three people, 2-on-1, something's going to happen like that, and that's just human nature, I think. But so, as far as the future for our people, it's like, well, who are we? To me, like, I don't identify with anything sort of nationalist, because to me the idea of nation has been lost, and that's not why. I never did to begin with. Like, I've always been like I don't like labels, so to speak, but like an anarcho-primitivist, if you will. But a lot of people get into that and have no idea what anarchy or freedom is, and if they actually had it, they wouldn't like it. Like I've often said about, I was never really a lefty or anything, but I've had a lot of views, which I still do to this day, which would be more like leftist kind of views, but depending on how long you talk about it, it tends to be like, so I don't like the left and right thing either. But I remember talking to these guys years ago about border policies, and they're talking about, because they worked in immigration actually, and their job was to detain people and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I don't believe in like borders in that sense. I said, but I do believe in sitting on the beach, and if someone shows up you don't like them, you fucking kill them. That's fine. Like, I like boundaries set by men.
Yes.
Like. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
it makes sense.
The future. Yeah. How does that apply to our future? Like, I don't know. Like, there's so many different variables as to who we are.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right.
I think we're all going to go in a few different ways. I think the internet's a great thing because, like, right now, like when I think we like the Germanic people, because I don't like the white label, because there's a lot of white people I don't care for, whether it be via genetics or whether it be via lifestyle choices, shall we say. Like, there's plenty of Germanic blooded people that I would happily let fall into the sea because they are nothing but scum. And it's a nature versus nurture thing. Like, that's obviously a poor nurturing existence that they've had. That I would view them like that. But I don't automatically assume someone's my brother just because of skin color,
like
or
you.
even
Exactly.
Like, if anything, that's a more of a dangerous thing to do, because you're more inclined to trust someone that you shouldn't.
Yeah, you're opening yourself up. You're opening yourself up to a lot of things.
Yeah, and that sort of comes to another thing that maybe I've been meaning to make a video about that sometime, and I might do sometime, because it probably would ramble a little bit. But there's like some sort of societies have really inherent tightness, like your Germanic and Norse and all those kind of people, like your Northern Europeans, small, tight-knit communities, hard to subvert. But the weakness of that kind of way of living is, we don't amass in great numbers. unless we really, really have to, which means that external forces can come in, and then that's where the might is right type of mentality comes in, and the people with the bigger numbers enslave or wipe us out, so we're vulnerable to that, but we're kind of immune to subversion, or at least when we were living in our natural state we were. Whereas then it tends to correlate then with the Southern European kind of people. They have this tendency to be able to amass in large groups and enforce their might physically through like militaristic force, and that's their great strength, and they can do very well out of that, but they're extremely open to subversion, and that's their weakness. And I wish that with this modern marvel that we have, which is intercontinental communication, we could try and find a balance between might and tight, and we could help each other and learn from each other's mistakes and gain some strength from each other as well, so that we might simultaneously eliminate the subversive types and create our own borders. And I mean, getting back to a tribalistic, like, that's another thing. Tribalism is not dead. It's just being perverted so much that we don't identify with anything of real value. So I wish we would find tribalism with our kin again. And like, this is where it kind of sounds like hippie shit. A lot of people try to jab me about this because I say, like, I'm not big on the whole colonialism thing. Like, if you need to have an agricultural system to feed your army so that you can go and get more land in order to feed your army, and have this perpetual system of like the war machine sort of thing, I don't think that's good. Like, I'm all for war. I'm all for, like, war is natural. That's something inevitable. But if your goal is to gain more land to build up your army, only to gain more land again, that's like a self-destructive path. But likewise, if you're going out into the woods and you just sit there, and you might be all robust and strong in your individuality, and you could fight a bear with your bare hands or whatever, but as soon as like a big force comes through, you're fucked. You're absolutely fucked. And so I sort of started rambling a bit there.
No, you're
good.
There's
somewhere in between. And I think the future of our people is identifying what our strengths are and acknowledging them and using them, and acknowledging our weaknesses and trying to overcome them, because like our strengths and weaknesses are a double-edged sword, and like you can look at that as a literal metaphor there. Like a double-edged sword, it means it can come back to hit you. I don't think people think about it that way. Like, it's great that way, but it can be just as bad that way. I don't think people don't picture that when they use analogies normally. Like, they think, there's two sides to it. Yeah, there's two sides, but one side is dangerous to you more than anything. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
That's a brilliant answer. That's a brilliant answer. I liked it. Myself, I tend to be, I hate to say it, I am kind of pessimistic in the short term, but in the long term, I'm optimistic. That's just, to sum it up, basically, that's the quickest summary I could say. I think that in the future, we're going to have a lot of hard times, and I think what we're witnessing and what we have witnessed is we're going to become a minority. Our race is on its path to becoming a minority. I don't see the government doing anything remotely similar to what the National Socialists did for the Germans after World War II. I don't see that happening. Which maybe if there is some sort of civil conflict, maybe there could be something that's put in place. But I'm not holding my breath for such an event. But what I think will happen is, as our people diminish in number, I think the quality is going to go up. This is where the optimism comes in. Because we're either going to die or we have to. We're going to have to learn to survive again, basically. And
what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's either we're going to go extinct, continue to be enslaved and go extinct, or we're going to learn how to handle the situation. We're going to have to, the ascending Ubermensch, I guess you could say. We'll rise out of the ashes.
I think that's a benefit
we've
that we
been
have.
going for about 2 hours. I'm kind of getting hungry myself. I'm going to have to eat me some leftovers here. Is there
Fair enough.
any closing remarks you have? Anything else you would like to add?
Not in short, not off the top of my head. For fear of rambling again.
Oh, it's
Best
fine.
not open up another. Best not open up another can of worms. I don't know. Yeah, no, I think we had a good chat.
Oh, I do too. It's I think
Hopefully,
it turned
there
out.
was something interesting. Yeah.
Oh, I think it was very interesting. I think we did outstanding for us to not really, have a plan about things. I think that's how I like to do things a lot of times. I just like to see what happens. A lot of times I think
Yeah.
plans end up broken, or you have to
Yeah.
you have to modify them too much. But I want to thank you again so much for coming on here.
Not a problem.
Everybody in the chat,
glad we could do it.
I'm going to put a link to Borra's channel in the chat here. Subscribe to him. It's probably been about 7 or 8 months since you've uploaded something, but anytime he does upload something, it's well worth watching. Absolutely. Guys, I want to thank everybody that came by to listen to us tonight, and want to thank you again, Bor. I don't want to keep you too long from your family. I know your milk might be getting low, so I'll let you go tend to that. Anything else at all you'd like to throw in there, Bor? Anything at all you can think of? Not really?
You put me on the spot now. No, I'll say nothing in fear of saying something stupid. So,
hey, that's a great talk, man. The chat really enjoyed it, Bor, and I know I've seen a lot of people. It's been very positive. They said, my friend Space Hopper Mark, he said that you're a fascinating guy. He really enjoyed the stream, and that's my sentiments exactly. People really enjoyed it. Hopefully, we could do this again here in the next couple of months or so, if you would like to.
Yeah. We'll try and make it happen. Yeah.
It'd be
It's a shame it took so long, but yeah, I can't help but feel partly responsible for that. Mainly my fault for being.
Oh no, that ain't your fault.
I just been too busy being cool.
Yeah, it's just too cool. You're too cool to come on the show.
Yeah.
Plus,
No,
you're
but it was good.
Family man. You're a busy man. Work, all the things you've got going on. But yeah, man, thank you so much. And chat, thank you for coming by. And I hope you have a wonderful day, Bor, and wherever you are in the world, chat. Thank you all for watching. Bye-bye.